So Genesis is the new official Yu-Gi-Oh format. What is Genesis? The rules are simple. I'm actually going to skip it down because it's actually even simpler than they say. First of all, I guess I should say the rules for playing are pretty much the same as they have been. You know, this isn't like Speed Duel where there's a different amount of zones or a different amount of life points. You are playing the same Yu-Gi-Oh that you've always played. The difference is they've gotten rid of the ban list and they've replaced it with a point buy system. So every card is legal, but every card also has a point value. And in an official Genesis tournament, the points will be set to 100. So you have to build a deck with a maximum of 100 points in it. I should say there's 500 cards on here that have a point, and you're like, what if it's not on this list? How many points are it? 0. The vast majority of cards in the game are 0. The only cards that have a point value are generic cards, staples, and newer cards that are like meta or rogue. And they do mention they're like, at official Genesis tournaments, the point cap will be set at 100. But they're like, if you want to at your locals, you can be like, I want to play a really high-powered format where like a bunch of illegal stuff is possible. You can set the point value to 200 or 300. Alternatively, if you want to be like, let's do an anti-meta night, you can set the point value to 20 or even 0 and just be like, anything with a point value is essentially banned. And the reason why this is getting a lot of attention is because, unlike so many other alternate formats like Time Wizard and Rivalry of Warlord and Speed Duel, they aren't just pitching this as something you can do at a side event. They also announced that there will be a full-on YCS, an official like regional level tournament that just uses this as the main format. Right now it's just in paper. I'm really hoping it comes to Master Duel because I think this is amazing. They found a way to solve the Max C problem without having to necessarily solve it. And to show you why, let's look real quick. So Max C is legal, everything is legal here, but Max C is 50 points, which means at most in a standard tournament, you can play 2 Max C. And you might be like, Joe, Max C's at 2 now. Yeah, but you know, there's 2 problems with Max C. One is that, you know, a lot of people say Max C is there to keep the combo decks in check. How am I supposed to defeat Ryziel? They're going to summon like 8 times during my turn. And the problem with that is that Ryziel can also play Max C. But in this format, Ryziel Detonator and Duo Drive are both 20, which means you can play 2 of each, and that would be like 80, and you still have some points left over. You could play 1 of each, and it would be 40. But if you play 1 each of the Ryziels, you can only afford to play 1 Max C at most. And it's the same with almost any meta deck. Any deck that's really powerful has some kind of pointed card here. And because Max C is 50, it means meta decks can no longer play Max C. Max C is now only usable by smaller rogue decks that need a big advantage against something like Ryziel. And then the other big problem with Max C, right? People be like, the problem isn't Max C, the problem is Ash Blossom. It's all the other hand traps. It's like, if we ban Max C, we also have to ban those, yeah, which is not true, but it is true that, like, yeah, Ash is really good, and you know what draws you into Ash? Max C. Or in the case of something like Tenpai, they Max C and they draw like 1 or 2 cards, but those cards are these big swingy board breakers that are going to completely devastate your entire field. Well, Ash Blossom is 15. So you could play a playset of Ash Blossom, that's 45 points. And then you have room for 1 Max C. So Max C could draw you into exactly Ash and nothing else. If you play 2 Max C, you don't have any other hand traps. Lightning Storm is 40. You can play 1 Max C, 1 Lightning Storm. So not only does it solve the Max C problem, but in general, it turns any kind of generic card, whether it be a hand trap, whether it be something like Lightning Storm, whether it be like a generic extra deck monster or a somewhat generic, like let's look at Typhon. Typhon is a 10. Zeus is a 20. Those aren't very high. It's very easy if you're playing something like Goblin Bikers to put in like a Zeus and a Typhon and a playset of Ash or whatever, because your deck kind of sucks. But it's this idea of like, if you're playing something like Ryziel, you're not going to have a lot of room for hand traps. And then as people are pointing out, almost every floodgate is like 100. And the band played on is set at 100. Angel 07, Anti-Spell Fragrance is 100. Artifact Scythe, Arch Nemesis Protoss, Ishatos, like Skill Drain, Rivalry, all these cards are legal, but they really do make it so that like, if you're playing Fabled or something, if you want to, you can just play like a plain Fabled deck and be like, and I'm gonna put the one copy of Rivalry of Warlord in because my deck is mono type. And if you draw it, that's great, but you do have to draw it. And I do like this thing, right? Because I think I've said before, I don't hate Skill Drain if you have to build your deck around Skill Drain. Like, if your deck is full of normal monsters and non-effect monsters, and you want to build a deck where it's like, I'm going to try to get out Skill Drain, and you have to play around it or find some way to out it, that's fine. The problem is a big meta deck that uses all its monster combos to build a big board, and then you're trying to play through it, and you do something, and they Appaloosa, and you do something, and they Baron, and then you finally get to play, and they Skill Drain. And they say, okay, now use your remaining 3 cards without monster effects to build a board that can beat over the 3,000 attack monsters I still have. And so it's like, yeah, if you want to get a deck that turbos out Angel 07 where you can negate summons, you can. But that's all you're doing. You cannot build the stun deck that sits on multiple floodgates. You cannot have a powerful meta deck that also flips a floodgate on turn 1. And then they also did something really neat, which I like. Butterfly Dagger Elma, 1 point. Just 1. And I like, that card's busted. That card's been broken since day 1. Like, it's been banned for so long. How is it only 1 point? Well, if you don't know, the equipped monster gains 300. When this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard while equipped, you can return this card to the hand. It's not a once per turn, and there's a bunch of cards that can use that to do, like, infinite loops. Those cards are all at 100. Like, the problem is not Elma. The problem is playing Elma with some kind of weird burn card. But all the cards that benefit from loops are at 100. So you can play those burn cards, but you can't play Elma with it. You can play 3 copies of Elma if you find some other way to use it, because by itself it doesn't do anything. Yeah, Sangan Kaiman, 50. Songan Summoning, 100. Saravis, just 5. And there's a lot of neat little stuff like that. Like, every once in a while you'll be going through here where it's like, Bahamut Shark is 81. Why is Bahamut Shark 81? Because Totally Awesome is 20. So, if you want to play Toad in your Frog deck or your Paleo deck, you can easily play 3 copies of it. But you cannot play Toad and Bahamut Shark in the same deck, because that would be exactly 101. Triple Tactics Talent, 93. Triple Tactics Thrust, 13. So you could play 3 Thrust, but you can't search for talents with it. And I forget, 13, what would that be times 3? That would be 39? So there's probably some spell that's like 41 or 42 or something. But yeah, they've done a pretty good job of balancing this where, like, they've made it so you cannot play 3 of this and the very best search target, but you can search for, like, in-engine stuff. But yeah, and they also say, one of the things that also has me excited about it, they brought back the Konami blog. For those of you who don't know, Konami used to have a blog where they would regularly give updates where they talk about the game. And especially, like, when they announced a ban list, they used to explain why they made the ban list changes they did. They stopped doing that after they got backlash for a really bad ban list. And they've been, like, dead silent since then. But they brought it back, and every day they've been releasing multiple articles. The Great 2003 Pot of Greed, Where to Play, What if I create the next big deck? Why do a point system at all? The whys just give us money every time, right? I mean, certainly there's part of that, but I think they finally realized one of the big reasons why should I give you money. The best answer you can have is because the game is fun and you'll want to play it. You'll want to play it, you'll want your friends to play it. This will be a hobby that you can do for a long time. And so it's like they're actually communicating about this. And one of the important things that I think they're hinting at there, because a lot of people have been looking at this and they're like, oh, I can make a broken stun deck this way. Transaction rollback isn't on here, so you can use it to copy a lot of broken traps. And they're like, we will be adjusting this list on a monthly basis. New cards will be given point values, and point values will change from month to month based on play rates, based on how people are reacting. I think they should bring this to Master Duel immediately, as soon as possible. Because this also, I've been talking before, like, you know, if you made historical formats, it would give reasons for people to, like, never decraft cards. Because, like, yeah, you ban Max C in Advanced, but then you have a format where Max C is playable. Always playable. You know, if you have Edison, I think, is Max C in Edison? I forget. Or if you want to do hat format, Max C is legal there. If you give people a format where cards are always legal, then they won't decraft them. And that way you can get people to continue using their cards and sell them new cards. And give them reason to craft old cards like Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity, which are legal on here. They're very expensive, but you can do it. So I think they could do this immediately in Master Duel, and it would be really good. It would be an excellent alternative to the main format, and it would be good for business. It would solve the Max C problem for me, and the problem of just having like an unbalanced format in general. The other reason I think this is a format that seems almost tailor-made for a digital client. One of the things I've talked about before, because I've always found it difficult to get into alternate formats. I've had people try to sell me on Trinity and Hisslander, and I know there's another big one. And my thing is, if I'm going to sell someone on a format, it has to be dirt simple. You can't have a bunch of rules and a new ban list. Because I still regularly, interact with people who are very new to Yu-Gi-Oh! And the ban list itself is just another barrier of entry. When there are people who are like, oh, I want to play this game, and they find cards and they start looking through bulk, and then they find something really good and you have to tell them, actually that card's banned. Actually, there's this whole list. You have to go look it up separately and kind of try to memorize it so that you know which cards can and can't be used. And so if you have to do that and then also tell me okay, well you only get 3 summons per turn, but also normal monsters don't count towards that, but also summons is counted by the number of summons, so if you summon 2 at once, it counts as 1. That's too much. If people already have to know how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And then you add more rules, and then you add a ban list, or in the case of Hisslander, I think there was multiple ban lists, depending on what era you're playing at, it's only ever going to appeal to people who are super fans of Yu-Gi-Oh! You're never going to get, new people in. But this is simple enough, because it replaces the ban list with a new kind of ban list, and otherwise the rules are the same. It's very simple, it's very easy, and it solves the problem of, you'll never find a card that's useless, you'll just find a card that's really, really high statted, and you have to build around it without using the other broken games. And especially if you do this on a digital client, if you have to play this in paper, it's the same ban list problem of okay, well, get on a computer or your phone and look up this list, control search to find the card you're looking for and make sure it doesn't have any stat requirements. But if you were playing on Master Duel, if they implemented this, it would be really easy to just have a view mode where the point cost of every card is up in the corner and maybe you have a bar at the bottom that fills up towards 100. It would be so much easier, so much more convenient to play in a digital simulator. And so it's I'm really hoping they bring it over there. The problem, of course, is this is only TCG, and I don't know if the OCG cares. If they did, I think it could be a new golden age of Yu-Gi-Oh! Especially if they have people who are actually passionate about the game, keeping up with it. If they have this and Advanced, then you have a reason to still, bring out power-crept, broken stuff, but also do other things. I will say the one thing that worries me about this, and it's something that if you're familiar with this already, you may be like, Joe, you missed the like rule number 1, which is no link monsters or pendulum monsters. The original field layout is used. No extra monster zones, no pendulum zones. Which I think really sucks, actually. They market it as like, you know, we're trying to simplify the game. But, I don't know, I feel like link monsters aren't that complicated. Like, I can understand, like, pendulums are a little complicated or whatever. But, like, can't you just stat them? Like, you've already got 500, what's another, like, 100, 200 on there? And a lot of people are saying, like, oh, you've got to please the Yugi boomers, this is something for nostalgia. And maybe, but I feel like it's a little more sinister than that. A lot of people know in this community, most Yu-Gi-Oh players are really against rotation. Yu-Gi-Oh has like a kind of rotation because the new cards do edge out the older cards in terms of playability, but a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players like that. I like that I can play Gem Knights again and pick it up as like a new deck and not have to wait for someone's permission. Or things like Paleo. Paleo's like one of my favorite decks, and that's a deck made up of almost exclusively like 15-year-old cards that just happen to have synergy with like new trap support. It's great. That's what I love about Yu-Gi-Oh! When some old forgotten card suddenly becomes good. And what I'm worried about with this, the no links, no pendulum, that they've lumped them together, is that they're basically saying, yeah, the last 10 years of Yu-Gi-Oh! Were a mistake. Let's just undo that. Let's just get rid of that. I mean, obviously there are still new decks you can play like Ryuge or whatever. But it really sucks that, like, I can't play Crusadia, I can't play Scareclaw, I can't play World Legacy, I can't even play, like, Crawlers. Like, Crawlers are too broken for this format. There's so many fun Link decks that are just gone now. And there's so many, like, you know, oh, I can play Ancient Gears, but I can't use Catapult. I could play Earth Machine, except the Link 1 Infinitrack is banned. And that, like, completely takes out the deck. And same thing with pendulums, you know, as bad as their reputation is, what about Dino Mist? Dino Mist is a great, super simple pendulum deck, fair, easily balanced, don't have to worry about it, but nope, just banned. Abyss Actors, completely banned. Metal Foes, Ignites. There's a lot of really great, like, pendulum decks that are simple, that are not complicated, and they've just blanket banned all of them. And then there's cards that just, like, happen to have pendulums. I remember looking through this at first and being so excited. Oh, they didn't hit Melodious at all? I love playing Melodious. Yeah, they lost the link, but I could still use the thing and normal summon just, oh, that card is a pendulum. You barely use the fact that it's a pendulum. The one card essentially just searches the spell. That's all it does, is like a pendulum scale. But those are gone. Nemluria? Sorry, you cannot play the Sleepy Girl deck because its main character just happens to be a pendulum. Sorry, you can't play Valmonica. You can't play the new Super Heavy Samurai stuff. You can't play Lunalight because Tiger is banned and Wolf is banned. You can't play Nouvelle because the one chef that searches everything is a pendulum. And so it's a pity that we're losing all these, like, rogue, playable, fun, easy, fairly simple archetypes. And, you know, maybe they'll release new support specifically, like, they'll release a card that's just like the Nouvelle Chef, but not a pendulum. There we go. Now we have something that we can play specifically in Genesis format. That'll be the big thing, right? Is because this is a TCG format, and OCG makes the cards, I feel like they wouldn't be doing anything to support this format. Maybe we'll see if they start releasing cards that are like, oh, here's a card that does what the Ancient Gear Link does, but it's a contact fusion. It's like, oh, well, that's just made for Genesis format. That's nice. They're throwing us a bone. Surely there are decks you want to play that don't require links and pendulums. Oh yeah, I'm still going to play this format. It's just one of those, I hope that they walk this back at some point. I hope once the format becomes more visible, that they eventually get rid of this thing. Because I would hate to play in a format where two mechanics are just forever gone. Especially when there's so many fun things you can do with those mechanics. The other thing, though, is that, like, let's say Genesis does really take off in a big way and they don't reverse this, then what you're going to see is, like, well, if they want to make a new deck that's good for the main format, but don't want to worry about statting it in Genesis, it's just links and pendulums. You know, you're gonna start seeing things where, like, they release a new deck and they just give it a random link or a pendulum that is like, their search card is a pendulum. When it's normal summoned, it searches, it has no pendulum effect. You would never use it as a pendulum, but that just bans it in Genesis format. And I think that would be dumb. Alternatively, Genesis becomes the main format. It eclipses Advanced format in the same way that Advanced eclipsed Traditional format. And then we just never see links or pendulums ever again. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Genesis. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below if this goes on YouTube or whatever. Otherwise, let's go ahead and get started with this.